The Branson, Lawson, Stutzman Family Trees, Phase 1. We all know Granny and Papaw and their children Patty, Marilyn, Janet, Sharon, Nancy, Brenda, Rhonda, and Ronald, and all the children, cousins, second cousins, and even third cousins that are in this family. But most of us do not know the history behind the Bransons, the Lawsons, or the Stutzmans that make up the heritage of this family. Through Ancestor.com, I was able to trace our roots. Although there is one more piece of family that I didn't find much information about yet. That would be the Robert side of the family. This is a work in progress right now, and I will try to get as much information as I can and update this as I find it. We will start with the Bransons. The Bransons are thought to have come from Norway to England and Wales, where they are thought to have lived for several centuries before any of them came to America. The name formerly was Branson, but that has passed through variations of Branson, Brunson, and Branson. The Bransons belong to the Danish race. On the left, you will see the Branson crest, and on the right, a picture of Wells, England, where it all began for us. Paul William Bud Branson was born on July 5, 1913, Oliver Springs, Tennessee. He was known as Papaw to his many grandchildren. He was hard of hearing and wore hearing aids, and at one point had to have his leg amputated from the knee down. Bud married Edith Frances Lawson, our granny, on October 13, 1938, and they had 8 children. He worked on the railroad and had to retire due to having bad legs. At one point, my research shows that he also worked as a sprayer in a leather plant. He died July 17th in 1989 in Indianapolis and is buried in Floral Park Cemetery in Indianapolis alongside Edith. The pictures shown here are pictures of Oliver Springs, where he was born. It was to the northwest of Knoxville. This shows the census for 1940, although it was actually taken around 1938. It shows Paul living with his mother Minnie and his grandmother Amanda Roberts. When this was taken, he was 26 years of age and had not yet married Edith. He married her later that year. It also shows him as the at a leather plant. Paul Branson's father was David Parley Branson. In some documents, he is listed as Parley, and in others, he is listed as David. He was born in Washburn, Tennessee on March 15, 1889. He worked in the cotton mills, Tennessee. Most likely, this would have been Brookside Cotton Mills in Knoxville, pictured here. He married Minnie Mae Roberts, and they had 4 children: Paul, Christine Maddie, Geneva Myrtle, and Eula Virginia. David Parley died in Indianapolis, June 9, 1937, and is buried in Stilesville, Indiana. This is the 1910 census. It shows David Parley and Minnie living with Minnie's sister and her husband, John and Angie Nelson. It also shows that they all worked in mills together. This is Washburn, Tennessee, where David Parley was born. David Parley's father was Eli Sevier Branson. He was born January 9, 1862, in Washburn, Tennessee. He was America Melvina Hobson, and they had 8 children: William Asbury, Nancy Sabra, Alice Charlotte, Pearl Matilda, Eliza Minerva, Sheridan Warner, Ethel Jemima, and David Parley. He died July 23rd in 1934 in Jamestown, Indiana, and is buried in Stilesville, Indiana. This is the 1910 census. This shows Eli and his wife America living in Kentucky with their children Nancy, Sheridan, and Ethel. Eli and his son Sheridan, who was 16 at the time, worked on the railroad as laborers. It also shows them as being able to read and write. Pictured here in Kentucky, where they lived. The 1920 census shows Eli and his wife America living in Franklin Township in Hendricks County, Indiana, with their children Nancy and Ethel. This also shows Eli as a laborer on a farm. Almon Asbury Branson is the father of Eli Sevier Branson. He was born February 13th, 1838 in Anderson County, Tennessee. He was married to Saber Dodson, and they had 2 children, Eli Sevier and Sheridan Almon Asbury. Almon was in the Civil War and died April 25th, 1865. Shown here is the marriage license for the marriage in February of 1862. Almon was in the Tennessee 1st Infantry Company D, and the picture on the left is a Civil War document. The middle is his Company D, and the right is the request for a Civil War headstone after his death. This shows some of the battles his infantry was in. Their camp started in Camp Dick. They were in the Battle of Logan's Crossing, the Battle of Cumberland Gap, and the Siege of Knoxville, and the Siege of Atlanta. The 1st Tennessee Infantry was organized at Camp Dick Robinson in Garrard County, Kentucky, August through September 1861, and a 3-year enlistment. The regiment lost a total of 385 men during the service. 49 enlisted men killed or mortally wounded. 2 officers and 334 enlisted men died of disease. The 1st Tennessee Infantry mustered out of service in 1865. The 1860 census shows Almon as a school teacher before the war. The 1850 census shows Samuel David Branson as the father of Almon Asbury. Shows Samuel David as a farmer in Knox County, Tennessee. Samuel David was born March 27, 1814 in Knox County, Tennessee. He married Lucinda Moser, and they had 6 children: Almon Asbury, Adeline, Perlina Roth, Eli, and Susanna. He died August 19, 1890 in Granger, Tennessee, and he is buried in Kit Cemetery. The cemetery and gravestone are both pictured here. Samuel David Branson, respectful and literate. He penned a book about his grandparents. Both of his parents were alive when he did this. His father most likely dictated it to him. Father David must have wanted his own parents' origins to be recorded and not lost to time. Stories about Samuel David that he told. There was an orphan boy whose parents died when he was quite young. He was born in Wales, but was reared by an uncle in England. 16 years old, he ran away from his uncle's home and arranged to come to America. The uncle tried to catch the runaway boy, but came to the dock just as the ship was leaving. Seeing that he could not capture the runaway boy, the uncle took out his purse and tossed it to the boy as a goodbye. This person, born in about 1740. Samuel David Branson says that Absalom Branson was married to Jemima Lorton, and that his mother was of Irish and English descent from Ireland. Absalom Branson moved to Marlborough, Maryland, and from there to Buncombe County, North Carolina, where he later died. His grandmother then moved to Tennessee, where he was born. It was 7 miles northwest of Rutledge in what is known as Crackers, 2 miles west of where he lived at Puncheon Camp. He was 4 years old when his father moved from the place where he was born, which is Crackers Neck Valley, to Raccoon Valley, Union County, Tennessee, where they lived for 6 years. They then moved to Rocky Springs, Granger County, where they lived for 2 years. It was there that his father died in 1830. He then went to Knox County, Tennessee, and lived for 4 years. In 1835, Anderson County, Tennessee, and settled on Hines Creek, where he lived 2 years. Here he was married to Lucinda Moser, August 17, 1838, and then settled at the head of Buffalo Creek in Anderson County and lived there for 4 more years. County and lived for 1 year on Brother T.L. Branson's land. He then moved on Mother's land in 1842 and lived 1 year. In 1843, he moved on Daniel McCullum's land, where he stayed for 2 years. He then bought the land from McCullum in 1945 and lived there for 14 years. Then he sold and bought land in Granger County, 5 miles northwest of Rutledge and Puncheon Camp. He moved on in October 1859 and lived on the same farm until now, April 16, 1882. Information coming from Samuel David's account of the Branson family origin was found on Ancestry.com. It was posted by Russ Branson from Oregon. David Aiken Branson, father of Samuel David, was born November 4th, Pennsylvania County, Virginia. He married Susanna Bolton Branson, and they had 1 child, which was Samuel David. Susanna was born October 10th, 1779. David died March 28, 1830, in Union County. He is buried in Carr Cemetery. His wife Susanna died February 1st, 1860. To the left is a picture believed to be David Aiken Branson. The other 2 pictures are the cemetery and the grave. David fought in the picture on the left is an application Susanna filled out for pension after David died. The middle picture is a document showing that he was in the 12th Regiment Militia. This is a letter written by Susanna Branson to state that she declared for David's military pension. In this letter, it states that he contracted a disease while in the military, and it lingered on throughout his life until he died in 1830. Absalom was born in 1740 in Wells, England, in 1764, and had 8 children: Hezekiah, Michael, Lemuel, Rebecca, also known as Betsy, John, Jonathan. John and Jonathan are 2 different people. Nathaniel. Absalom died in 1798 in Buncombe, North Carolina. As talked about in Samuel David's account, Absalom was an orphan and lived with an uncle and ran away to America. The boatyard, but was too late. Absalom then arrived in Maryland in 1757 and moved to Virginia by 1760, where he met Jemima. Jemima was born in 1744 in Augusta County, Virginia. She died 2 years after in Granger County, Tennessee. She was Irish Catholic. The father and mother of Absalom are not noted. This is all I know at this time about the Bransons. Family tree. Edith Frances Lawson Branson, also known as Granny, was born October 18, 1921 in Indianapolis, Indiana. She married Paul Branson October 13, 1938. She had 8 children: Janet, Sharon, Nancy, Brenda, Rhonda, and Ronald. Edith is pictured to the left, and the picture in the middle and on the right are the grave and cemetery in Indianapolis. The 1930s Hodges Lawson and her mother as Tilly Alice Lawson. It also lists John Hodges as an engineer on a steam engine train. John Hodges was born August 2nd, 1891, in Sumner County, Nashville, Tennessee. Alice Stutzman, September 15th, 1919, in Hamilton County, Indiana. They had 5 children: Theodore, Edith Francis, John, Albert, and Robert. John Hodges was an engineer on a steam engine, Indianapolis, Indiana. The 1937 city directory showed him and Tilly living at 1728 West Washington Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. It also lists him as a fireman. Draft card for World War II filled out by John Hodges. It shows them living at 115 North Elder in Indianapolis at this time. It also lists his place of employment as Baltimore and Ohio Railroad at 220 Virginia Avenue as a locomotive engineer. He was 51 years old, which would have been about 1942. John Hodges' mother and father are shown in the 1900 census as being Louis Lawrence and Francis Lawson. In this census, his mother Frances working at a school. John Hodges was 8 at this time. Louis was 40 and Frances was 31. This would put Louis being born around 1860 and Frances being born around 1869. This is in my research. John Lawson is the father of Louis Lawrence Lawson. He was born April 6, 1824 in Virginia. He married Ellen Doherty on December 7, 1850. They had 15 children: Rufus, Isaac Newton, Robert, Louis, John Charles, Sarah Emily, William, Frank, Ida May, Edward, who they called Hattie, Martha Ellen, who they called Maddie, Arthur, Otis John, and Moody. John died April 14, 1894, and was buried in Crown Hill Cemetery in born May 18, 1837, in Chillicothe, Ohio, and died September 9, 1910. The 1860 census shows John as being a wagon maker and being born in Virginia. The 1870 census shows John as a farmer. Edith's mother was Tilly Alice Stutzman Lawson. She was born in Indiana in 1900 and died in. Her father and mother were John W. Stutzman and Sarah Alice Small Stutzman. John and Sarah were married September 9, 1883. Tilly had 10 siblings: Almond, Orzo, Ora, Ollie, Bertha, Belle, Earl, and Elijah. Pictured here is Tilly, with most likely one of her sons. Tilly's father, February 9, 1862, in Dubois, Indiana. He is pictured here when he was a young boy. The 1900 census shows them living in Dubois County and lists him as a farmer. John Wesley's father, born in Kentucky in 1841. He married Mary J. Stutzman, and they had 7 children: John Wesley, Artemica, Nora J., Joseph, Emma, Lonzo. This 1880 census shows Wesley as a farmer. I hope you've all enjoyed the Branson, Lawson, Stutzman information that I've shared here. Like I said before, it is a plan on sharing any